If you had told anyone watching the first chaotic
What if the country everyone wrote off 4 years ago is now striking deeper, hitting harder, and costing Russia more money than anyone thought possible? Back in those frantic early weeks of Russia's full-scale invasion, almost no one believed Ukraine could still be fighting effectively more than 4 years later. Yet here we are in early March 2026, and the facts on the ground tell a very different story. Ukraine isn't just holding its own. By every major military and economic measure, it is operating from a stronger position than it was 12 months ago. The reason? While Russia doubled down on the same old tactics, Ukraine spent the last few years quietly building an entire new generation of weapons, tactics, and systems made right at home. The result is a shift that's now visible on the battlefield and in Russia's bank account. Let's start with the part that hurts Russia the most: its wallet. Ukrainian forces have launched wave after wave of precise strikes on oil refineries and the shadow fleet of tankers Moscow uses to dodge sanctions. Every refinery forced offline and every tanker taken out of service is one less barrel of revenue funding the war. According to independent analysis, Ukraine disabled roughly 38% of Russia's total refining capacity through more than 120 attacks in 2025 alone, followed by another 40 strikes in just January and February of 2026. One of the hardest hits came at the massive Volgograd facility, which knocked out 40% of its production and represented about 5% of Russia's pre-war fuel exports. Russia still has some cushion in excess production, so net export losses sit closer to 6 or 9%, but the trend line is unmistakable. Ukraine is deliberately choking the cash flow that keeps the Russian military running. The real enabler behind these long-distance strikes is a single Kyiv-based company that almost no one outside Ukraine had heard of 2 years ago. Firepoint started in mid-2022 with a handful of engineers, architects, and even game designers working in makeshift workshops. Today, it employs more than 2,000 people across hidden production sites around the capital. Their workhorse, the FP-1 one-way attack drone, can fly roughly 620 miles, carries more than 60 pounds of explosives, and is built to shrug off electronic jamming. Ukrainian crews credit this single platform with more than 60% of all deep strikes inside Russia over the past year. Oil depots, ammunition stores, command centers, you name it. Next comes the heavier FP-2, designed for hardened targets at shorter ranges and now being upgraded to carry a 98-pound warhead. Then there's the FP-5 Flamingo, a true cruise missile that hauls a massive 2,540-pound payload up to 1,100 miles. Its fiberglass body is almost invisible to radar, and production is already scaling toward 210 units per month. In January 2026 alone, the Flamingo struck Russia's Kapustin Yar test range and an Iskander missile factory, a Ukrainian-made missile taking out the factory that builds the missiles Russia fires at Ukrainian cities. At the top of the lineup sits the FP-9 short-range ballistic missile, 500-mile range, 1,700-pound warhead, and a blistering Mach 6.5 terminal speed. That speed gives Russian air defenses almost no time to react, especially as their S-400 inventory continues to shrink. None of this would be possible without two quiet revolutions happening behind the scenes. First, Ukraine's entire defense industry has exploded. In February 2022, the country had just 7 drone makers. Today, there are more than 500. Electronic warfare companies jumped from 2 to over 200. Private missile developers went from 0 to more than 20. The same story repeats across unmanned ground vehicles and dozens of other categories. This homegrown boom means Ukraine no longer has to wait for foreign permission or supply chains. Second, in January 2026, the government appointed Mikhailo Fedorov as defense minister with a clear mandate: cut the red tape and corruption that were wasting precious resources. On March 10th, he signed a sweeping new procurement order. From now on, frontline units send their actual needs to the general staff. The list that goes out to manufacturers contains only technical specifications, no brand names, no favored suppliers. 5 battlefield data platforms then decide what actually gets bought, based on real combat performance, not connections. 80% of the budget now flows only to systems that have already proven themselves in combat, The remaining 20% is ring-fenced for rapid innovation and testing. The result? Ukraine can take a promising new drone design from prototype to large-scale combat trials in weeks instead of months. Soldiers no longer receive junk they have to repair in the trenches. That same spirit of rapid adaptation is showing up in counter-drone technology too. Russian fiber-optic waiter drones, the ones that sit quietly beside roads until a target appears and can't be jammed, had become a serious headache. Then, Ukrainian footage surfaced of a directed energy weapon calmly tracking along the fiber-optic cable and shutting the drone down in seconds. The suspected system, small enough to fit in a car trunk, could flip the economics of drone warfare: cheap electricity versus expensive enemy hardware. On the actual battlefield, the picture in February 2026 looked equally encouraging. Russia's winter offensive in the south, aimed at linking up axes near Huliapol and Orikhiv to threaten Zaporizhzhia and eventually the Donetsk fortress belt, largely stalled. Ukrainian counterattacks in late January reclaimed more than 150 square miles in under a month, the first time since 2023 that Ukraine regained more ground than it lost in a comparable period. Russian commanders were forced to pull elite airborne and naval infantry units away from other hotspots just to plug holes. Reserves meant for a spring-summer push are being burned on defense months ahead of schedule. Meanwhile, Russia's manpower problems are becoming impossible to hide. In 2025, the country signed up 422,000 new contract soldiers, a 6% drop from the year before. Some regions even cut signing bonuses because the money simply wasn't there. By December 2025, monthly losses exceeded new recruits for the first time. Analysts say Russia needs roughly 45,000 new soldiers every month to sustain serious offensive operations. It's barely hitting 2/3 of that number. To keep the pipeline filled, Moscow has quietly expanded recruitment to include people with unpaid debts and stepped up offers to foreign citizens from Africa and South America. Put it all together, and the story is clear. Ukraine has turned the war into a contest of innovation and efficiency rather than pure numbers. By striking oil infrastructure, fielding longer-range domestic missiles, cleaning up its own procurement system, and adapting faster on the battlefield, Ukraine has created a self-sustaining defense machine that no longer depends on Western range restrictions. Russia still holds a numerical edge, but that edge is being paid for with ever higher costs in blood, treasure, and equipment that Moscow can't easily replace. The real question now isn't whether Ukraine can keep fighting. It's how long Russia can afford to keep losing the way it has been. The next few months will show whether these tactical and economic gains can be turned into something even bigger. But one thing is already certain. The war that many expected to end quickly 4 years ago has become a very different kind of contest. And right now, Ukraine is writing the rules. What do you think happens next? Drop your thoughts below, and I'll see you in the next update.